Well, guys, I think we've all heard just about everywhere. We've heard all about this fake news, right? Hear about the fake news and the censorship and the accounts getting blocked and banned, right? Everything's about the fake news, fake news. But it's not talking about fake news, it's calling everything Russian propaganda. Just like this government run proper not website trying to push Russian propaganda. But before we get to this, guys, we need to talk about the Strong Cities Network. Um, when you read what's in these documents, you're going to be absolutely blown away. And as I slowly start to piece together the truth and you start to see the escalation of events here, it is going to paint a very frightening picture. And I suggest you guys buckle up because this is just something else. Let's talk about the Strong Cities Network. The Strong Cities Network will include an international steering committee of approximately 25 cities and other subnational entities from different regions that will provide the SCN with its strategic direction. The SCN will also convene an international advisory board, which includes representatives from relevant city-focused networks to help ensure the Strong City Network builds upon their work. It will be run by the Institute for Strategic Dialogue, ISD, a leading international think and do tank with a long-standing track record of working to prevent violent extremism. Okay, so we know that by reading this, okay, the Strong Cities Network is run by the Institute for Strategic Dialogue. Okay, and as you can see here, this is the website for the Institute for Strategic Dialogue, and as you see here, it says the Institute for Strategic Dialogue helps turn research into action in the fight against extremism. And here is the a booklet from the Institute for Strategic Dialogue that is running these Strong Cities networks that we've been hearing about. And as you can see, you'll pretty much learn all you need to know just by reading the subtitle on the cover. On the front line, a guide to countering far-right extremism, which is basically, well, anybody who's viewing this video right now, don't you think? So, let's go into some of the pages inside of this booklet, shall we? And it says those carrying out these actions, far-right extremists, are a broad group ranging from less ideological youth street gangs to neo-Nazi terrorist cells, anti-Islam activists, and registered political parties. Though they differ in their aims and methods, there are some defining features: racism, xenophobia, ultranationalism, and authoritarianism. And I think these are all things that probably sound familiar to you guys because this sure has been in the fake news all over Wall Street Journal and CNN and the likes of all these fake news sites. Now let's talk about what they say about educational programs. Aim to shift attitudes through tailored curricula. This includes Holocaust and religious education as well as more targeted programs such as teaching people about the multicultural history of a place and the plight of refugees. Educational programs may work specifically to challenge myths and prejudice harbored by particular groups. As you can see, this is targeted education. This is straight from UNESCO. This is straight from Bill Gates. This is Common Core. And they are targeting these kids with exactly what they want them to learn. And it's just like anything else that you get from the government for free. It's not free. it always comes with a catch. Keep in mind, this is your Strong Cities Networks booklet that we're looking at right here. While extremist voices are in the minority, they are able to punch far above their weight because they are determined and dedicated to their cause. Whether individuals on social media, movements disseminating hateful videos, or leaders making public statements, hate speech and incitement can have a damaging impact on target groups and those vulnerable or on the peripheries of extremist movements. Taking down posters and graffiti in public spaces is important and critical to ensuring that communities do not live in fear of the far right, because we're so scary compared to those liberals that are paid by George Soros out protesting in the street and destroying their own cities, right? Don't forget this line about leaders making public statements because and talking about hate speech and incitement, because we're going to get back to that in just a moment here. So let's continue. Convincing people not to get involved. Indicating the possible consequences of their involvement can be a successful method of diverting vulnerable individuals away from demonstrations. This has been done through home visits by police, which Grande61 had just covered in one of his videos, teachers delivering the message in schools, right? Targeted teaching, and through innovative methods employed by local authorities, such as the consequence cards used in Luton. Local authorities and police have also put on diversion activities, including free trips outside of the area, football tournaments, and action adventure trips. Now, keep in mind what they're talking about of this consequence cards, okay? Because they use this to break up the standoff that started in Oregon that kicked off this year. Now, obviously, as we've heard from Deb Jordan, pretty much like 3 out of the 5 people there were agents. But everybody, what was the big message going around? Right? If anybody goes to get involved, they're going to get targeted by the FBI. They were warning them of consequences so no more people wouldn't stand up and get involved. This is the exact same thing of these consequence cards, is the exact same thing that they're doing with these insane bathroom laws, where they want anybody just to be able to go to the bathroom with each other so nobody gets offended, right? And what happened in North Carolina when they challenged the law? The NBA left and said, okay, this is your consequence of what happens if you try to challenge this bathroom pedo law that we want to impose on you, right? It's a consequence card. And they just told us here in Texas that a bunch of businesses are banding up together to fight the government, saying that if you don't let this bathroom law happen, that a bunch of our businesses are going to leave and you're going to lose a bunch of money. Consequence card, see? And this is how they're trying to push this liberal agenda. Let's continue. Whether during a demonstration or simply managing a far-right group that is active in the area, a strong media strategy is key. The most important thing to ensure is consistent messaging. This can be done through local actors, crisis actors, including police, municipality, citizens groups, social workers, and journalists, carrying out a joint mapping of the problem and developing a joint media strategy so there is no risk of inconsistent stories emerging. And notice, they mention the media several times. I've pointed this out repeatedly, and people haven't listened, about how John Kerry went to meet with the leaders of Hollywood before all this thing happened. And then what happened? They all got on the same page, and everybody in Hollywood and everybody in media started trying to beat down the American people with the same bogus message. This is straight out of the United Nations Strong Cities Network playbook. So we've heard over and over again about there's voter fraud, right? Electoral fraud. Hillary won the popular vote. We need to abolish the electoral college. Russia hacked the election. We don't have any proof, but hey, they did it. And this is just getting us, beating us down and down with this thing. And then, of course, you got media telling so many lies to the American people. They went and called CNN the Clinton News Network. So who can you trust about where these hacks really came from? Well, how about this man right here, Julian Assange? He might know a couple of things about his sources, don't you think? And of course, you have to go immediately to the uh, murder of DNC insider Seth Rich. Julian Assange went out and said almost so much as to say that Seth Rich was his source without actually saying it. And even as you can see right here from this article, even went so far by fueling the conspiracy theory by offering a $20,000 reward for information leading to a conviction in the Seth Rich case. So, was the election hacked by the Russians? Were the emails hacked by the Russians? Or were the emails just simply copied over by DNC insider Seth Rich? Pretty interesting. Well, but they want to stick to the script like the Strong Cities Network and the United Nations tells them to do. Just keep lying, keep lying, keep lying, and keep saying the Russians are coming, the Russians are coming. Except wait, as you see here, Homeland Security tied to attempted hack of Georgia state election base. So according to Georgia, the Russians aren't coming. The Americans are. And let's not forget, Mikhail Leeson dead. Russia Today, now more friendly known as RT, founder with links to Vladimir Putin killed by blunt force trauma to the head. And let's not forget, this was initially labeled as death of natural causes. He said it would be right to assume that Leeson, who knows quite a lot, was ready for a deal within the FBI's investigation, which would make his position better. You don't normally go to Washington for treatment or for business, but to communicate with officials, right? So according to this, according to the sources, the founder of RT went to the FBI to make a deal with them to give them information to get Putin off his back, and the FBI killed him. Right? We all remember the scene where Obama was sitting there and he thought the mic was turned off, and he was like, oh, it's okay, tell Putin I'll have more flexibility after I win the election. Right? And then the founder of RT goes to meet with them, and he's going to spill the beans on the Russians so that we have them taken out? Right? So is it the Republicans working with the Russians? Or is it Washington? And all this stuff that's going on over the Middle East is a big dog and pony show. There's some interesting questions that we have here, folks. And who are we looking at right here? Well, Kanye West actually took a picture in this spot as well. This is one of Time magazine's 100 most influential people on the planet. This is Marine Le Pen. This is the person who is more than likely going to win the next presidency in France. Well, let's look at Marine Le Pen. The Marine Le Pen went on trial charged with anti-Muslim hate speech. French Front National Party leader made comments at a rally in 2010 prompting anti-racism and human rights groups to bring case against her. This is one of the most 100 influential people on the planet according to Time magazine, and they try to take her to trial for hate speech because she didn't want the Muslims killing more of her people like they did on that gruesome Bastille Day parade massacre. Now, we know that was obviously some crazy psyop going on, but the Marine Le Pen is trying to stand up for her people, and they tried to put her in jail, right? And you remember what it said about statements from political leaders, right? Cities for the Strong Cities Network handbook. Look at that. They got to Marine Le Pen almost, but now she turned it around, and she got the charges dropped, and she's probably going to win the presidency over in France. Who is this guy right here? Well, this is Geert Wilders, and he said, After the travesty trial, I will never be silent. Geert Wilders was brought to trial over remarks he made in 2014 when he asked a crowd of supporters whether they wanted more or few Moroccans in their country. And these guys, of course, are Muslims. And of course, he just asked the people that. And they started the trial, or at the time of the trial, because they put him on trial for this, right? For inciting hate speech. And he said he was getting tried for saying what millions of Dutch people thought. And this is the leader of the biggest this big political party over here in the Netherlands. And the Freedom Party, he's the Freedom Party leader and is a member of Parliament. And they actually took him to court and found him guilty of giving group insult and inciting discrimination at court this morning, but was acquitted for incitement to hatred. So they let him off for incitement to hatred, but he was guilty of group insult and inciting discrimination. But check this out. The judge didn't impose a punishment. Legal experts had anticipated a $5,000 fine and a custodial sentence was also possible. The case has left the leader of the Netherlands' top polling political party with a criminal record. And once again, the only thing they did here is they played the consequence card. They're letting you know, hey, if you get involved, this is what's going to happen. This is a guy who's the leader of the Freedom Party. They already accomplished what they wanted to accomplish. They didn't need to give him a fine. They didn't need to put him in jail. But they let all the people in the Netherlands know that if you speak up against the Muslims from running over your country and putting you under Sharia law and raping your women and doing the rest of the stuff they do, that you're going to go to jail for being a hater. Pretty interesting indeed. Once again, straight out of the Strong Cities Network, straight from the UN. And look at this right here. Racist, xenophobic, Islamophobic, and misogynist Donald Trump accepts. Is this guy running for president or dictator? Asked Bernie Sanders. And once again, as you notice, these are all the buzzwords they have in the Strong Cities Network handbook and from the ISD, straight from the UN. And this is their playbook they use in every country to discredit people to make sure they get their agenda through. You see how this is all tying together to Agenda 21, y'all? Is it starting to make a little bit of sense? Because the point I'm going to get to at the end is absolutely terrifying. But when you start seeing how this stuff all connects together, it's pretty disturbing. Yep, and so it all goes back to this, the Strong Cities Network, right? And now they want to start a ministry of propaganda right here in the United States. Don't forget they had Operation Mockingbird, fully implemented CIA program to spread disinformation throughout American media. CIA Director William Colby testified to the Church Committee that over 400 CIA agents were active in the U.S. media to control what was reported through American mainstream television, newspapers, and magazines. Okay? This is not fiction, y'all. This is actual court testimony. This is testimony to a government committee. This really, really happened. And people in America need to realize and just say, oh, there's some conspiracy stuff. This is it right here. This is the stuff that really happened, y'all. And what do they like to do, right? They like to sneak this stuff through the National Defense Authorization Acts and then feed us a bunch of propaganda through all of your wonderful members here of the fake news, the American propaganda. And of course, this is all talking here about the Smith-Mundt Act, which was the 2013 NDAA, and that overturned the Smith-Mundt Act. The Smith-Mundt Act was the act that kept the U.S. government from being able to do propaganda in the United States against the American people. Since 2013, they have been able to do so. And if you don't believe me, Look at this article here, May 18th, 2012, from BuzzFeed, the super trendy website that all the millennials like to go to. Congressman seeks to lift propaganda ban. Propaganda that was supposed to target foreigners could now be aimed at Americans, reversing a long-standing policy. Disconcerting and dangerous. This is from BuzzFeed News, so y'all young people out there especially need to pay attention to this, because this is for real. And they've even went so far now with this Russian propaganda. Tucker Carlson went on TV to get a senator to admit, to get a Democrat to admit, he said, look in the camera and say, Putin definitely hacked John Podesta's emails, and he wouldn't do it. Tucker called him out on it, and he called him a Russian agent on live TV, y'all. They called him a Russian agent on live TV. When you get done with this video, go look up the video. It is absolutely insane. And of course, their newest attempt at sneaking in more propaganda stuff is in the newest National Defense Authorization Act. And this is what we have here, H.R. 6393. And if you go right here, it's a list of all of the intelligence-related departments right here. And if you go right here in the third paragraph, the bill establishes an executive branch interagency committee to counter active measures by the Russian Federation to exert covert influence over peoples and governments. It places travel restrictions on personnel and consulars of the Russian Federation in the United States. Now, what I'm showing you here, because if you go back, and I just want to show you this, as you see right here, there are two summaries, right? What you see right here, when you see the third paragraph, and it talks about the Russian propaganda, is the first summary. And as soon as people found out about it, they switched over to the second summary. As you can see, Homeland Security there at the top. We go right here, you see Homeland Security there at the top. We go 1, 2, 3, third paragraph, and it says the auditing must establish guidelines, blah, 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 blah. It's not there anymore. And why? Because they put it way at the bottom because they knew most American people were going to be too lazy to scroll down to see the anti-Russian propaganda stuff that they're putting into this thing, which basically just means more censorship for Americans. So, your government who's telling you the truth, the CIA, that Russian hacked the planet, is hiding the fact that they're putting anti-Russian propaganda stuff in the National Defense Authorization Act. Now, before I get to that, and I just want to, I think it's important because it's very clear that we have a lot of propaganda coming out of Washington through the mainstream media, through the dismantling or the modernization of the Smith-Mundt Act. They're doing a full-on press of propaganda. Our own government is against the American people. Now, they're claiming that we're getting propaganda from Russia. Now, if that's true, which could be to some degree, shouldn't they offset each other? And more importantly, regardless of this little buzzword like propaganda, Americans have an obligation to get all the information that they can and to make their own best opinion based on whatever kind of system they want to. Right? So in essence, what the government is telling the American people, especially the ones that voted for Donald Trump, is that we're too fucking stupid to make the right decision, so let's censor you. They just called us all a bunch of retards. I'm gonna move on, but doesn't that piss you off? It pisses me off because you know what? I'm not a fucking retard. So this is where it gets interesting, guys, and this is where y'all need to pay some serious attention because this all goes back. Everything is all tying back to this right here. Everybody seems to forgot about this, but this is what's up. This is Executive Order 13603. This is the National Resource Preparedness Act. Hopefully, y'all remember this by now. And at the time of a president's choosing, the federal government may take over all forms of energy, all forms of civil transportation, all usable water from all sources, all commodities and products that are capable of being ingested by either human beings or animals, health resources, drugs, biological products, medical devices, materials, facilities, health supplies, services, you name it, they can take control of it. And that includes the people too. So, we look into the bill, right? And it's talking about how the National Security Council and Homeland Security Council, in conjunction with the National Economic Council, shall serve as the integrated policy-making forum for consideration and formulation of national defense resource preparedness policy. It shall make recommendations to the presidents on the use of authorities under this act. And of course, we continue. Now, this is a list of all the agencies who all play major roles when this National Resource Preparedness Act triggers into play. And it talks about the Secretary of State, Secretary of Treasury, Secretary of Defense, Attorney General, Secretary of the Interior, Secretary of Agriculture, Secretary of Commerce, Secretary of Labor, Secretary of Health and Human Services, Secretary of Transportation, Secretary of Energy, Secretary of Homeland Security, Director of National Intelligence, Director of the CIA, the Chair Councils of the Economic Advisors, the Administrator of the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, and so that's that. And as we know, Obama's made it very clear he doesn't need to wait for Congress to change the law because he's got a pen and a phone, right? Isn't that what he always says? Well, he's been making use of that pen on that phone lately, hasn't he? Let's take a look at all these executive orders that he's passed, mostly within the past 6 to 9 months. He's amending the order of succession in the Department of Homeland Security by executive order. A little weird, don't you think? And of course, the order of succession is, well, if somebody dies, right? And then he's appointed a whole new group of program here. And then he's got Community Solutions Council, right? This sounds like more UN stuff from the Strong Cities Network. And then he's got new delegations of functions for the Office of Personnel Management, right? More job descriptions changing. And then he just amended the manual for the court martials. He completely changed the court martial by executive order. Then he changed the order of succession within the Department of Treasury. Changed the order of succession within the Department of Veterans Affairs, providing an order of succession within Environmental Protection Agency. A delegation of new certain authorities and assignment under the Trade Facilitation and Trade Enforcement Act of 2015, right? So he's delegating more authority and more power to more people, right? He's switching it all up. Then he even went so far as to do a facilitation of a presidential transition, right? He's changing up all this stuff, the way everything in the government is working. He's moving everything around all at the last minute. Is it just a lame duck move at the last minute? Let's continue and see here. Now, if all this wasn't bad enough, let's not forget in September 2015, they're using behavioral science insights to better serve the American people. What does that mean exactly? Well, if you ask me, they're using the exact text from the Strong Cities Network, ISD, to use propaganda against the American people via executive order and the 2013 NDAA. Very interesting indeed. And then, of course, establishing a federal earthquake risk management standard. Is something big going to happen? I don't know. But hey, let's also, while we're at it, let's coordinate efforts to prepare the nation for space weather events. It's getting a little more interesting, don't you think? Safeguarding the nation from the impacts of invasive species. And here's a little clip from the thing right here. And what do we know that stands out in this article that really makes all of this so more bizarre? There it is right there. Alien species. It talks about eradication, completely wiping out of alien species, and they make sure they define eradication so you understand exactly what it means. Pretty weird, right? And you got to ask yourself, was Alex Jones right? I hate to say it, y'all. What if Alex Jones was right? He's been saying, and I thought it was weird with all this fake news going on. He keeps talking about how the CIA is calling for a new election and calling for a Trump assassination. And I thought with all the stuff going around with the fake news, that was a pretty bold claim to be putting out there. If it wasn't controlled opposition, right? A little weird. But look what we saw. Look what I saw in Yahoo today, guys. Bill Gates says Trump has the opportunity to be just like JFK. So Bill Gates, he's basically the inventor of Windows, the master of spying, right? He's got his hands tied in everything from wanting to depopulate to the United Nations to forced vaccinations to Common Core. Bill Gates has got his hands all over all of it, and he just said Trump could be the next JFK. And this is right here straight from Yahoo by Matthew Belvedere. Bill Gates just made a call out to the elite saying, you know what? It's time we kill this son of a bitch. Remember JFK, right? He said there's a plot in this country to enslave every man, woman, and child, but before I leave this high and noble office, I intend to expose this plot. Yeah, he came out and he said that. 7 days later, he was assassinated. So, this is what you guys need to get. This all goes back to the National Resource Preparedness Act. Why do you think Obama is going through and changing all the succession of all the things? Why is he preparing for all these weird random events? He's doing all this for the false flags that are going to come, because he's going to enact this National Resource Preparedness Act before Trump ever gets into office. And a whole bunch of people in the government are going to be rounded up and they're going to be taken to jail. Right? And he's going to take over. And you're saying, well, you know what? That's impossible for that to happen. Well, you know what? Even in a place like Turkey, people thought that was impossible. And over 150,000 people got arrested or fired in 24 hours. Well, maybe not 24 hours, in the matter of a week. It sure does look like a very foreboding, slowly but steady build up to enacting this thing into play. I hope y'all enjoyed this, and I hope y'all give this some serious consideration and like it and share it with your friends, because I believe this is important information for us to pass around. But as always, this is rated F for fake. Y'all have a great day.